Okay, so the next thing we need to do is install this plate. This is basically one of the legs which we removed, the normal legs for the XY plotter, right here underneath this L bracket. And this is going to serve as actually the mounting location for the camera. So we need to remove these two screws right here holding on this L bracket, okay, and then lift it up, slide this plate under it, okay, and then screw it back down. Out, screws out. Okay. Lift up the L bracket and slide this under it. Okay. And then reinstall the same screws. Probably a good time to mention that these this is unquestionably the hardest part of assembling the robot, at least from the original steps from MakeBlock's instructions, and that's primarily because this bearing, this linear bearing, is so close to these mounting holes that it's hard to get the nut under there. What we found is actually these linear bearings are in some cases asymmetric. So often all you need to do is actually, when you're assembling it, rotate the bearing 180 degrees, and then on the other side there will actually be enough clearance for the nut to get in there. But it's still a very tight fit. use a longer screw here because I'm tired of fighting this. So yeah, the longer screws make that much easier because you can put the nut on below the bearing and then just screw it up. I was able to get that one on, but that one was more difficult. So that's one thing you can do to get that on. Okay, so now our plate is in place for the camera. The robot's fairly flexible with which kind of camera you can use. I'm going to show you two different camera options and also a couple different styles of mounts for those cameras. So one option is to 3D print a mount. So if you have a 3D printer, you can do that. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the camera. Okay, so this is a board camera from Edmunds. So this is a board camera from Edmund Optical. This camera actually is quite expensive, and it actually costs more than all the rest of the robot components combined. It gives us about 3 times more resolution than this $30 camera from Amazon. Now, whether or not you really need that increase in resolution is sort of debatable. It's obviously nice to have, but it's by no means necessary for the analysis. Okay, so this is the mounting plate that I machined for the board camera. You can also 3D print this. I'll provide the file for 3D printing this. You can also make a mount for the inexpensive camera using this included beam that came in the make block kit. That will basically just involve drilling 2 holes, 2 new holes in this beam. And I'll show you how to do that. But first we're going to take apart this, so the board camera obviously doesn't really need anything done to it, but to actually use this cheap webcam, we need to actually completely remove the housing. So I'm gonna do that right now. Okay, so the first step is just to take the camera and then just pull the end off. Okay, that comes right off, and you can hopefully see in there there's the actual camera lens and the circuit board. Okay, so we actually need to remove all of the rest of this housing, okay? And it's fairly simple. The first step is to remove this little latch, so we're gonna unscrew those 2 screws right there. should just come right off. Alright, you can throw that away. Alright, now if you look at this, there's no real obvious way to open this, and that's because they hide the screws beneath the sticker. So if you remove that sticker, you can now see that there's screws there. Okay, so let's go in and unscrew those. Okay, now that plastic shroud will slide off. Okay, you can cut that off with a pair of wire cutters or whatever. Now to actually free the camera from this aluminum housing, okay, there's 2 more screws. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Okay, there's 2 more screws right there and there. Okay, so we're just going to remove those. Okay, so now the entire camera can just come right out. Okay, like that. I'm going to go ahead and remove the rest of the bottom of this aluminum plate here. Off, throw that away. Now, to get this aluminum plate off of this wire, okay, you can do a couple things. You could cut the wire and resolder the wires back together. You could take a bandsaw and cut through the aluminum, okay, or you can just leave it on there. Which is probably the easiest thing to do. It's not going to really do anything other than kind of be a mild annoyance at the end of the cable. So you can just let it fall down to the end of the cable, and it can hang out there. It doesn't really matter. Or if you hate it, you can just cut it off. Okay, so just leave it down towards the end of the USB cable. Okay. If you hate it being there, again, you can remove it, but it might be more trouble than it's worth. Okay, so now that we have the camera free, I can show you how we're going to mount it. Okay, now I'm going to show how to assemble the camera mount. So the robot supports two different styles of camera. So there's a high resolution monochrome board camera shown here with its mount. Okay, so every board camera is going to be slightly different, so you'll have to design and fabricate your own mount for your board camera. We have a so this mount is actually made out of aluminum, but we also have a object file on Thingiverse, so you can 3D print this the mount for this camera. So to mount this camera, you'll also need 4 screws and a set of matching nuts to actually mount the mount onto the board. Okay. For the inexpensive web camera, you can either use a 3D printed mount, which is shown here. So this is also on Thingiverse. You can print this out. Or you can actually make a mount out of this beam, which was included in the robot kit. And I'll show you how to make that in a second. To make that, you'll just need a 3/32 drill bit and a drill or a drill press. And I'll show you how we'll make that in a second. You'll also need 2 number 2 screws that are about 3/4 of an inch long, and then several number 2 nuts to function as board standoffs and to secure the camera to the mount. Okay. All right. Okay, so to actually construct your own mount from this beam, so take this beam and line it up with the through holes on the camera. Make sure you leave a little bit of clearance here so that the camera isn't right up against the mounting plate on the robot, and then just using the Sharpie mark on the beam the location of the through holes. Okay, and then the next step is to take that 3/32 drill and put holes completely through the beam. All right, it's recording. Okay, so now that we have our mount made, so this is showing the 2 holes, how they should roughly appear once you finish drilling them. We can show you how to assemble the whole camera mount. Okay, so with both these mounts, they're gonna attach roughly the same way to the camera. So take the camera on like this, and then this is with our 3D printed mount. Simply place it over the holes and then line it up and make sure that it isn't flush with the top, so leave some space. You'll then want to put the number 2 through screws. And these fit very tightly, so you might actually need to thread them through. Okay, once it's all the way in, it should slide fairly easily. Okay, and just repeat it on the other side. Okay, so now that that's on there, it's usually a good idea to go ahead and add a nut or two onto each screw just to serve as a board standoff. This is really important when you're using the metal mount so that you can actually space the mount away from the circuit board of the camera so that you actually don't short circuit anything. With the 3D printed mount, it's sort of not necessary. But it's helpful to have the nuts on there anyway, just to secure the screws and keep them in place. So I've put one on each screw at this point. I'm going to go ahead and put one more, and that should be enough clearance that when we put this on the metal mount, it won't touch the circuit board, and you should be able to hopefully see. Maybe. So get that there. A lot of focus, but you can see that there. Okay. Okay, so now that the screws and nuts are tight, we can add the mount, right? So it essentially works the same way. It doesn't matter if it's the metal one or the 3D printed mount. Just slip the nuts or the screws through the holes that we drilled in this case. And what you can see now is I've put the screws too low, so we're going to actually need to slide them up to the top. So I'll take that back off and then loosen these slightly, and then slide this up to the top now and tighten it back down. Don't touch the lens like I just did. Slide that back down. Okay, so now I've got them at the top. So now when I put this on, we should have clearance. And you can see now that hopefully you can see that the board is separated from the top of the mount, so it's not going to touch anything, so that looks good. So now if we were going to use this mount, we would just secure it with two more nuts, but I'm actually going to use the 3D printed mount now, so I'll just take this off and then put on the 3D printed mount. Okay, and then I'm going to adjust that so that it looks the same way. Okay, like that, and then I'm going to put those two nuts on there and tighten them down. Okay, so now I'm just going to take some pliers and tighten these nuts. If you have a really tiny wrench, that would be obviously better. This works fine. Okay, now I'm going to take a hex wrench and actually just tighten these screws completely so that the camera doesn't move at all. Okay, that looks good. So that's the $30 camera. The board camera is significantly easier once you actually have your mount made. To remember before you put the camera on is you actually need to add the mounting screws before you put it on. So the screws that will actually hold the mounting plate to the robot, because of the way this is designed, you have to add the screws first. So before you do anything, go ahead and put the 2 screws right there that are actually going to hold this onto the robot, okay, before you go ahead and screw the camera to cover them. Alright, so go ahead and put the screws through the board this way. Alright, and then screw these down. So adding a nut again here gives sufficient clearance that nothing on the circuit board should get touched by the mount. The USB socket also actually protrudes up and serves as a standoff for the board, so you shouldn't actually touch anything on the board, assuming what you're mounting it on is flat. Okay, so now with the screws, okay, facing down, okay, put the camera board onto the mount, okay? Like that. And then you'll want to secure that. And then this isn't tightened down completely, but you'll actually attach this to the robot the same way that we're going to attach the cheap camera. Right? So it's the same two mounting screws, just sort of inverted. So now we'll attach the camera to the robot. Okay.